wouldn't you feel more proud when you teach somebody how to wire and then they never ask you for help again? You taught them how to fish.
Oh, yeah.
Duarte calls them the drift shakes. You know, that first lap, your legs shaking and your hands are like this. It was all about making progress every round. Forward progress. And the whole goal at the end of the year was to be able to drive the car in the zones and drive at the limit of the car. And I definitely accomplished that.
Drip and Drift.
Welcome to the Drip and Drift podcast. Thanks for joining us. My name is Nick, aka Drip and Drift, and today's guest is John Temple, aka J-Tuned Motorsports, with Slide United. Had Rich on here, and I was like, dude, I gotta get John on here, so glad you could join us, man.
Yeah, thank you. I was actually kind of jealous because I didn't know Rich got invited or was on here until after it was already released.
Yeah.
And I was like,
he didn't
Rich,
even tell you.
what the hell, man? At least let me come hang out.
Yeah.
I could have brought up some good topics, from the background couch, watching back there.
Right.
Third party, whatnot. But
Yeah,
so thank you.
Yeah, dude. I had just been following Slide United in general, so I didn't really know that he had you as a driver, or that what the deal is with y'all and everything. So we'll get into that and everything. But how's recently everything been? You've been planning for any events or?
So the year kind of ended for me at LS Fest East in September. I locked up the motor. I've been having lots of oil line failures. Okay. So oil line failed, had no idea for the entire run, and it was kind of kaput after that. Yeah. So it's all been refitting for 2025 as well as a bunch of other big plans. But this year has just been, I went out to the US Drift Circuit rounds to say hello to everybody, and hang out. But I have not driven since LS Fest East.
Okay. Yeah. I've been in the same boat for different reasons, but it's tough when you go even a couple months without driving. I go to support the homies, I go to hang out, but there's that urge inside of you that's just
Yeah, I think it's even tougher when So yes, I lost the motor, and I have, as I call the 4-point grate, old trusty dusty.
Yeah.
And I had that motor on standby, but I was physically not in the area to make all that happen.
Yeah. So
the season the whole year, right, regardless of Pro-Am or regular driving, it was just over.
Yeah.
Because I was down in South Florida.
Yeah.
And I wasn't coming back until I hit you up back in November.
Yeah. When you got back, yeah. Dang. Well, you're here now, so let's.
I'm here. I'm the car's fully apart. Can't put it down.
Yeah.
Bunch of stuff in the works, and that's. So I'm back to the full grind. I'm just a little behind.
Yeah.
Especially with, Fuel Fest is like the kickoff of the year, right? And there's 2 of them now.
Yeah.
At March 1st and March 8th. So Tampa and then Fort Lauderdale.
Carlos just told me that. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's kind of like, oh man, well, I'm not ready.
Yeah.
and it is Christmas, and this is Christmas Eve.
Yeah.
So I'm saying Christmas Eve, 2 months out, I am not ready.
Yeah. 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 I guess this is our holiday special, being that this is being recorded early Christmas Eve and probably released this week or next week. But what was your first interaction with drifting? You briefly told me you were sim driving before actual drifting, but something probably got you into that to want to sim drift? Or?
Yeah, I'll actually bring you way back. So before I got into drifting, I was into time attack.
Okay.
So, World Time Attack over in Australia, and then all the toge roads over in Japan, they would do, hill climbs and downhill and all that other stuff. So, that kind of brings you into my love for Subarus and GTRs and all those all-wheel drive platforms and Evos. Love those cars. Yeah. Absolutely love them. But basically, that interest was in Japan, they do this drifting thing too. So we're talking, 2010 here of just oh man, I love both of these things. One is, way more on the edge and a lot faster, a lot more committed. But then, the drifting is just so much fun, so cool.
Yeah.
Now, of course, at a higher level, things have kind of changed since that perspective. But that was
because drifting is fast and you need to commit.
Exactly, that was the early perspective of it all back then.
Yeah,
but it's all from when us old guys talk about the magazines and the option videos and the DVDs, that's where it all started.
Yeah.
And I knew one year I was going to get into it.
Yeah, and and then so you got the sim then from that experience and from seeing all of that.
Yeah, to wrap the long story short, I was doing my road racing and my time attack, and then I was like, you know what, I'm going to make the prime mistake of doing an LS swap, S14, and that just that's the current car, right? But that took 10 years.
Yeah.
And during my last deployment in 2019, I pieced together a sim and was like, if I'm never going to get this car done, at least I'm going to learn how to drift on the sim and then go from there.
Dang. So you did have the car before the sim, but building it through that crazy process, you ended up driving on the sim before the car. That's
Correct.
Wild.
Correct. And I even drove a different car before that one because, I was like, well, I'm going to, say, do what I preach. And it's like, well, just get a 350Z and start doing it.
Right.
And that's what I did. So I built the sim as well as purchased the Z and learned how to drive on the sim and went out to the skid pad in the Z and then just elevated each way all the way up.
Dang. And now we got the S14 V8 LS. What else? I mean, it's full comp car, so what else is all done to rear mount radiator?
For those that know or that can figure it out, it's actually Taylor Hull's old competition car that he did Pro 2 in and then did 1 year in Pro.
Ago.
Yeah,
A long time ago.
Exactly. It's got the FD stickers on the roll cage. That's how you kind of know that it was his car.
Yeah.
So it was already full, kind of like tube chassis and front and rear and all that kind of stuff, but I had to redo a lot of it. So the only thing that's really left from Taylor Hull is the roll cage, to be plain and simple.
Yeah.
But yeah, so standard comp build, LS, dog box, rear mount radiator. Dog box was something new this year, and then something new for next year is quick change. So now it's going to have all the good bits under it, even though that chassis is old, tired, and bent.
Yeah.
There's some suspension stuff that I just can't do because I can't get the alignment right. The alignment is as close as it can be. So,
yeah.
But yeah, so it was 4-point great back in 22 and 23. This year, 24, it was LS3 big cam. So I wanted to do a custom cam, but the Texas Speed Stage 3 basically had all the specs I was looking for except extra lift. And I was like, you know what? Whatever. I'll just risk the extra lift and wear and see how it does.
Yeah.
But for next year, because I was running out of time, and it takes, to get a long block LS3 from, GM, it takes anywhere from 4 to 6 months. So I was running out of time. So I was like, you know what? I have to spend the extra money to get a built motor this year. So I went with Smedding Performance.
Smedding.
Yep, they're out of Texas. He's called That Engine Guy on YouTube.
Okay.
And when I was so I'm an engineer. So Rich and I like to do a lot of analysis, right? So I made decision matrices on built motors way back in the day. And Smedding just kind of came out on top, and for a lot of different reasons. So cost is obviously a big factor.
Right.
But when you look at a lot of these builders, when they're just taking parts and pieces and putting it together, are they really an engine builder, or are they just the same as, putting brakes on a car?
Yeah.
Right? Now, of course, a little bit more level of expertise, right?
Sure.
But if somebody's going to build my engine, I want them to build it with their parts. So, that's what really stood out to me about Smedding. It's a Smedding ground crankshaft. It's a Smedding ground camshaft. They spin and balance their entire assembly. They engine dyno it. So it comes to me with a baseline engine dyno tune, a dyno graph, and broken in. And it comes with their parts that they make in-house.
Right.
That, to me, is a proper engine.
Yeah, that you could then order from them if any of those parts.
Oh, yeah, you can order my engine right online. Now, I've added some bits to it because, as we've seen in my history, I have had lots of oil line failures. So, this year I'm spending the extra money. It really hurts, but going dry sump. So I added some extra dry sump bits on there. But yeah, you can order my motor right from the website. It's nothing super fancy.
True that. And it was always a thought to go like V8 or LS. It was like you never wanted turbo setups or anything like that.
So I operate on the theory that it's all about. So let's talk comp theory. I've always operated under the theory that it's all about area under the curve, right? You look at the dyno graph and it's all about the area under the curve because, and you can achieve that multiple ways, right? LS, JZ, whatever. And then when you start talking about the money, it's really a toss-up in what you want to deal with, right? Because, a 1,000 horsepower drift LS with the right bits and 1,000 horsepower drift JZ, that kind of coming into the same price range.
Yeah.
But as soon as you get out of pro and pro spec mindset, the answer is LS all the way because you can do it for cheaper. You can get parts from Summit, from the local auto supply shop, AutoZone and Advanced and whatnot. And you can rebuild them in your backyard and you're not waiting on stuff or having to go to an importer or stuff like that. So, and then if you look at area under the curve, right, if we're talking, fun time from like my 4-point grate, to, like an LS3 or an L92, like, the Escalade 6.2 motor, like for 300 to 500 horsepower, not have to touch a thing, and it's less expensive, and you get better area under the curve. So, now it depends what you want, right? So, if I were out there to have fun and want noises, then obviously you got to go with some inline 6. But if you're just out there to try to keep it on a budget and you want to be out of that VQ, bleeding ear noise range,
stay reliable.
LS is a no-brainer.
Yeah. That's what I hear. But then you also, of course, like you said, if you want the sounds and I guess the hot boy status and all of that, JZ, or even now all the case swaps and stuff. I haven't seen too many of them out there now, but I see more and more. So people are.
I think the downside is that there's just more work to the K swap, right? Because if you think about it, it's like, okay, well, I can LS3 swap or I can K swap. They're both going to come in at 500 horsepower, right? Because my LS3 with the big cam E85 made 500 horsepower, 500 wheel horsepower. It's like both of them will make the same power, but that one is just spend money, drop it in. Especially with Holley. Oh my God, I learned how to tune on Holley. It was so easy. It was great. You do the K swap and it's like, okay, now you got to build intercooler pipes. You got to build a down pipe. You may have to build a turbo manifold, and then you have to tune turbo. Now you're dealing with 3 times the tuning stuff you got to do. I think it's just a couple extra steps that makes it, for the same price, that makes it a little bit more difficult.
Yeah. To each individual, it's like, what do you really want? What is it that you want? Because, I never hate on any of it, but it is funny hearing people like, LS, no, JZ, no this, no that. I always laugh when people argue about.
It's all about what people want.
Yeah, exactly.
And then I stand by area under the curve, right? So if you're doing any sort of low-level competition outside of Pro Spec, LS all the way.
Yeah.
But if you're just driving to drive, then it doesn't matter. Do what you want.
Yeah.
But for me, it was cost.
Yeah. And I also saw you still have the STI WRX.
I do, for sale.
Oh,
yes,
for sale.
it's for sale.
What's asking price?
I have it listed for 20, but
Okay.
I'll let it go for a deal. Message me. Let's negotiate.
Of course.
But so that used to be my daily driver.
Okay.
Back in the first round of going to college, and then of course I did typical Subaru things, and I blew it up. So then I turned it into full time attack race car.
Yeah.
And I raced it before my last deployment in 2018. I did a global time attack at Road Atlanta, and then I was part of SCCA, Central Florida SCCA, so that's Sebring and Daytona.
Okay.
Never did Daytona, but did Sebring a lot.
Yeah.
And then it's just kind of been parked ever since then.
Yeah.
It still has a special place in my heart because the engineer in me really wants to 3D scan, design my own aero, learn and build to make my own carbon fiber, do all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And, I also had the terrible idea of like, I can make 1,000 horsepower out of this thing with an aluminum block L92 with a turbo, and be about the same weight
Yeah.
and just piss everybody off and go do time attack. But the drifting right now, my drifting's growing so exponentially, especially with the Veterans Trust and, the fact that Jackson's even adding more potential U.S. Drift Circuit Pro-Am rounds. That's just, I don't have time for it.
Yeah.
And it's just going to keep sitting around. In the perfect world, I would race it once a year at Texas at the, I would say it's the premier time attack event at COTA.
Okay.
But to go do that, it's going to take months and months of work.
Yeah. For
that
one of
I
them
just,
a year.
yeah. So it's like, okay, do I work on the drifting or do I work on the time attack?
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm going to work on the drifting.
Yeah.
So it's just time to let it go.
Yeah.
But good working car. Just needs wheels and a tune. So in order to unlock the computer, the tuner took his tune. But he left the baseline, all the stuff in there, so it'll fire up and you can drive it onto the trailer.
True.
But don't floor it down the street because it ain't tuned.
Yeah. Yeah, dude. I'm now all about rear wheel drive cars, but I had a 2004 WRX, had some, of course, the Cobb access port, and a couple little things that was one of my fastest and most fun cars, but it got me into some trouble because of how rowdy it was. But
oh yeah,
dude, I miss that thing.
This car almost got me in a lot of trouble because that was back when what is it? Is it down south in the west side of Miami? Is like what, Highway 27 or something like that? Okay. That's when we like the first Fast and Furious. Remember that movie when people would line the streets?
Yeah,
we would go down to that road down there and line the streets, and people would be racing.
Yeah,
like we'd be standing in front of our cars with people going past at like 150 miles an hour. Yeah. It was dumb.
Yeah, before takeovers.
Before takeovers, that's what we were doing.
Yeah,
and that's where I was doing that stuff with that car.
Yeah,
and then. That was also before like fast pass lanes, but there was this one specific lane on 95 North that actually had the little bollards blocked off, and we would take that over and do like 20 rolls and stuff like that, because then we didn't have to deal with other cars. Yeah, the bad stuff back then. Yeah, but got away with it, luckily.
Fun.
Mexico.
Yeah, Mexico. Yeah, and before before recording everything as well, and like.
Oh yeah, that was GoPro 1 days.
Yeah. Or like iPhone 1 days. Like,
oh yeah, I didn't even have a smartphone back then.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, man. But good times. So how'd you get involved with Rich and Slide United and everything? Just both being engineers, or? No,
it's actually a pretty good story. So, you may or may not know Greg Jones.
I don't think so.
He used to drive. Well, the car is now on the third owner past him, but back in the day, he used to drive that sparkly purple IS300 with the 1J.
Okay.
He was part of Barn Built.
Okay.
Anyways,
sounds familiar.
I met him at I went to Formula Drift, Road Atlanta, 2016, something like that. I forget the year. It was the year my sister graduated college. But basically, I went early to go to Formula Drift and watch Global Time Attack, and then went to the graduation, and then that was that. But as a solo guy there, not knowing anybody, I just found a group of people, brought over my beer, and was like, "Hey, can I join you guys?" And lo and behold, it was Greg Jones, who lives in Jupiter, was drifting. I met the other guys and started getting introduced to Barn Built and whatnot. And, I communicated with him over that course of the year, but that was during my second deployment. So when I was coming back, I hit him up and I was like, "Hey man, I'm finally coming back. Like, when's the next drift event? Like, I got to get out, and hang out." I was like, "Hell, I'll even change your tires for you. I don't care." And he was like, "Actually, Chris Jackson is putting one on at, PBIR." Well, it was PBIR. Did it name change back then? I forget. But, Moroso, PBIR, down there in West Palm.
Yeah.
So I went out there, got a ride along with him, hung out, met Mike Galati, and then through those two met Rich. So, and then basically I went to the Denny's down the street on the way to 95, Mike and Rich, and that started the friendship right there.
Yeah.
So it was all through a U.S. Drift Circuit event through Greg Jones that all sort of happened.
Cool. And then just stay buddies, stay drifting, and then started a team together. Like,
no, so Slide United long existed before I ever came up, and it's gone through a phase. I would say it's on its like second phase now. But I had a special connection with Rich because him and I are very similar. I was in the construction industry back then. That was my first degree, construction management. I did estimating and contracts, and I did that in the military too, and lots of construction stuff. And I was going nowhere career-wise. Did I have a good job? Was I making okay money? Yeah, but it was just, when I'm going to do this for the rest of my life and not move up the ladder or move up pay-wise. So it's like, well, I got to change. I got to figure something out. And he was like, well, he's like, I did the same thing, and I'm doing it right now. And during that time, he was actually going back to school at UCF for mechanical engineering. And at that time, too, I knew of, like, Keegan, OG Keegan. I was like, oh, I know Keegan's a mechanical engineer, too. I've always wanted to do that. Maybe I should do that. So part of my last deployment was applying to UCF and going back to get my mechanical engineering degree. And that was where, that was really solid in the relationship with Rich. Because like I said, I was basically 4 years behind his path. Yeah. And, and he helped me through all that, as well as helped me learn how to do stuff on the car. Cool. It's been a little different recently, especially through the builds. Yeah. Because he's not like there helping me. But if you think about it, like, wouldn't you feel more proud when you teach somebody how to wire and then they never ask you for help again? You taught them how to fish. Oh, yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. So, like, Rich, Rich and I have had this conversation recently. He feels a little left out, and I'm like, but Rich, you taught me how to fish. Yeah. Like, if you want to come over and hang out, great, but I don't need you there to weld. I don't need you there to wire. I don't need you there to, help me understand this dynamic. Yeah. Like, we've done this together. I've learned, and now I can do it myself. That's cool. So, it's a little sad that we're not hanging out as much, but at the same time, I followed right behind his footsteps. We both work at Lockheed Martin. I now know how to do all this stuff on my car because he was always there and helped me learn. And now I just kind of do it all by myself now. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, it's bittersweet. It's bittersweet, but eventually we'll both be out there at the same time. Yeah. Our timings have been completely off. Like, now his car works and my car is, on jack stands, no suspension, in parts being welded on. Yeah. Dang. Well, yeah. Timing is pretty bad for us right now. Yeah. But yeah, Slide United was around way before I showed up in the picture. The OG people will remember the big stacker with, a bunch of different cars and always the tire machine and stuff like that. And then it went through a refit. And during that, like, downscale or separation of team members and whatnot was kind of when I kind of finally popped into the picture. Yeah. So if you're looking for that timeline, that's really where it was. But, in all honesty, Rich is the head figure of Slide United. That is his baby. That is his LLC. Yeah. That is his team. I am just a part of that team. Yeah. It kind of looks like I am Slide United because I have it on the door of the car. I've been the one that's competing and driving and the one that's really been out there. But I'm just, a driver, just part of the team. In most motorsports, the owner isn't the driver, I feel like. But in drifting, like, a lot of people do that themselves. Like, they're the owner of the company, so they're the driver of you know what I mean? Like, absolutely. I feel like every other motorsport, it's like the owner is not the driver. Outside of any sort of like amateur stuff, especially in drifting, all the teams are, self-owned. Yeah, yeah. They're definitely one of the guys that are driving. Yeah. You talk about Animal Style, like, one of those guys definitely owns that team name or brand, or even if it's an LLC, like, how Rich has it, Monster Performance. That's a shop
Right.
that's owned by Lee.
Right.
That is his crew.
Yeah.
And they drive under that name brand.
Yeah.
It's all that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's cool. So as far as competing, how long have you been competing for now?
2 years.
2 years?
I've done 2 years. Now, I technically competed in 22, but I showed up to the last round. It was a doubleheader. It was just, I'm here to get my feet wet
Right.
and to just learn
Experience.
and experience it.
Yeah.
Right. And just, because you don't know where to start until you start.
Right.
And that was an absolutely disastrous round, but I learned a lot. And I learned a lot about myself, about the car, about driving, and also about everything behind the scenes.
Yeah.
That, like, there was a lot of stuff that I thought that I needed as part of like a team, a crew, and a setup and all that stuff. And I was just like, I don't want all this. This is way too much. This is way too many things. People are in the way. Things are, getting confused and being down delegated to somebody else. And it's just like, I need to start fresh and way, way less.
Yeah.
So
Minimize a little bit.
Oh yeah, I minimized big time.
Yeah. A lot.
So for the following year in 23, it was just me and Rich. Period.
Cool. And it worked out, I'm guessing, better.
Well, that was actual first year, and it was all about making progress every round. Forward progress, whether it was mainly driver, but it was also set up and learning the car. And the whole goal at the end of the year was to be able to drive the car in the zones and drive at the limit of the car. And I definitely accomplished that.
Cool.
For 23.
What do you think the hardest part of competing is, in your opinion?
It's everything behind driving. It's the car, it's the team, it's the money, it's the logistics, both getting to the track as well as the logistics of your stuff, right? Tires, fuel, nitrous, food, lodging. And I kind of like all that stuff. I've like construction management, right? The planning, the Gantt charts and all that stuff. I like, people might complain about it, but I really like all the backwards planning of it. And something that, you'll get from Rich too, is when we used to talk about plans, I already know what 2026 looks like.
Yeah.
Or
he was telling me this. Yeah.
It was like, I already know what 2026 looks like. So it's all about making sure I follow on the footsteps of 25, and then I will be at, 26.
Yeah.
The planning is a whole year ahead. So the same as just planning for an event, I'm already planning for the following year.
Wow.
And I enjoy that. It's also difficult. The plan changes in the military, as we say. The first plan is never the plan. The plan adapts and changes. But I think that's the most difficult part of all of it. Because, the driving's the driving.
Yeah.
And whether you're, stone cold Steve Austin, who can just go out there, do one lap and rip it, or if you got to get the shakes out and get the groove going, Duarte calls them the drift shakes. That first lap, your legs shaking and your hands are like this.
For sure.
However it is for you as a driver, but the driving is the reward.
Yeah. And as far as competing versus fun days or style or any other aspect like that of drifting, what draws you so much to competing? I guess what's like the best part for you?
I'm always competitive. Yeah. I love competition. So actually, Acevedo recently announced that, he's not competing in US Drift Circuit. And we actually had that conversation at Black Friday at OSW. I went up to him and say hi. I really like talking to his pops about like the program and the cars and stuff. Acevedo more is just more the driver, right? But he was like really unsure of what he wanted to do for the next year. Because school was starting to ramp up, and he was like, I don't know if I want to do all this competing stuff. And I was like, well, if you're a competitive person, you can always get your competitive vibe out or itch out doing something else. So during the years that I was deployed or I was in between jobs because of the different military deployments and I couldn't afford to do car stuff, I always got that itch out by doing something else. So I've always done something competitive every year, whether that's online video games or a bodybuilding competition or something. So I kind of gave Ryan the same talk. And he was like, look, you already have a program together. It was like, and if you still want to do stuff in drifting, you can take your program to these bigger fun events and you'll be fine.
Yeah.
You know, like Grid Lifes and stuff like that. I was like, but if you need to be competitive, like I know you're into working out, you know, maybe not the right thing, but you could do a lifting competition or, you know, other stuff like that. It was like, so, you know.
It's interesting you put it that way because I've had the same thing, but I do like being competitive, but more so in creativity. Like when I was younger, I did a lot of drawing and acting and theater, and then I got older, played music, got my creativity out that way. And then once I slowed down music and got more into driving, that's when I picked up the camera and started making videos and finding something I could do to express my creativity in that way, similar to how you did competitive.
I'm a little jealous of that because I'm not very creative.
Yeah.
I can be creative in solving a problem, but not creative in like creating something. Like editing videos for me is an absolute nightmare because it's just, I can't come up with, I know what I want it to be like and I know what other people do, but I can't figure out how to do it. But in the same sense that a competition day at US Drift Circuit, even if it's a terrible, terrible day, is just as much fun for me as a fun day.
Yeah.
And sometimes more fun. Just because I thrive in that environment. And Rich kind of jokes, he says I'm an alien, but like I can go out to grid, and this has already happened several times. I'll go out to grid a little early and just sit in the car and take a nap. And I have to wait for Colton to come over and wake me up, be like, hey, you're up. And it's like, okay, you know, tighten up the helmet, tighten up the straps, shake the legs out, start the car, and into the burnout box. So
yeah, that's funny. Yeah, dude. As far as for me or for anyone really getting into wanting to compete, what advice do you have for making that jump from fun days to going into your first competition event?
If you're already at the fun days, that means you already kind of have the basics, right? You already got the car, maybe you have a trailer or truck or whatever. The competition stuff, you just gotta do it.
Yeah.
And you know, you'll know what you're missing after the first round.
Yeah.
Now I will say that this year, I think that the competition stepped up like 3 steps forward, which I loved. I thought was awesome.
Yeah.
Because a part of my planning, I was like, you know, 600 horsepower car, whether that's supercharger or nitrous, dog box, having different differentials for gearing so I can optimize my wheel speed per track. Like, man, I'm going to have like a top 5 car. And then this year at US Drift Circuit, I was like, wow. I came out with 605, thought I was going to be a top 5 car, like on paper. Was like, oh, I'm not even top 10. Dang. You know, like I really stepped up. But so don't worry about the car. Worry about going out there and seeing if you like the environment. Because it's a totally different environment. Yeah. You know, you'll go sit in grid for an hour because there was a wreck or they had a one more time or who knows.
Or 10 one more times. Yeah.
Or, yeah, like we had at round 2, like 3 one more times, and every single one more time there was a freaking accident. Yeah. So I sat in grid and was like, I was going to get to drive when it was light out, and now it's going to be dark.
That's fun.
So just, you know, do you like the environment? Do you like the pace? Do you like the, you know, the tension that's in between the drivers and the drivers meeting? You know, as long as you think your car can do the track, then just do it.
Yeah. Go out there. Yeah. Nothing you could lose, really.
Nope.
I feel like. Yeah. All right. We were talking about sim driving and drifting before this. I can't go like an hour without losing focus and without my driving going down on the sim. What do you think? Just keep on practice, like go a little further past that, or how do you think I should grow that more?
So in this little studio here, Sim is just off camera behind him, and I made a comment about it because I'm a big part of the sim drifting community with ACS, who are the guys that built the compound for LZ and have done a bunch of other stuff. They made Sebring. I've been trying to get them to make Turn 15, 16 in Sebring too, but they're kind of a little too big now, so they're not going to do that as a charity for US Drift Circuit. But anyways, huge proponent of the sim. I drive it every week on Thursday nights. That's my routine. Haven't done that recently, but just so to answer your question, it's just like working out, right? When you're trying to train for a marathon, you're going to go run 1 mile and then progress to 1.5, then progress to 2.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just about increasing your endurance, and that's all it's going to be.
Yeah.
So if you can only drive good for 30 minutes now, just be consistent with driving for those 30 minutes, and then you'll see, oh, hey, I can drive for 45. Now I can drive for 45 minutes.
Yeah.
And you don't have to do it every day. I can now sit on my VR sim for 5 hours, on a Thursday night just because I drive every week.
Mm-hmm.
And, that's once a week. That's not even, like running every other day or swimming, every other day or practicing, like when we were young and we were playing sports, like what we'd practice like four times during the week.
Yeah.
Like you can build it up slowly and surely once a week, not a problem.
Yeah. And it's funny that you told me you were sim driving before actual drifting. I was drifting in real life before sim driving. So like your learning curve, what I feel like was so different than what people like me have gone through. Like everyone I know that's driven first still doesn't like the sim. Like
I think it's a fantastic comparison.
Yeah.
Because now you're going to struggle more to learn on the sim because you've learned to feel with your butt.
Right.
Versus I learned first to feel with my eyes. And that's because of driving on the sim. But if you look at it from seat time to seat time, how many hours did it take in the seat, whether on the sim or in real life, to go out there and complete a clean lap?
Yeah.
It takes about 3 times as much if you start on the sim. Mm-hmm. Like my hours, even though I showed up to my first drift event at OSW, I pulled the handbrake for the first time, was like, so that's what it feels like. Went into figure eights in the oval and then did a big figure eight all like my first time. Mm-hmm. That still took 120 hours on the sim, before I got to that point. Versus how many hours did it take you in real life to link your first lap?
I think it was my second or third event.
Right.
So the whole I linked the whole track.
So 30 hours?
Yeah, maybe not that long, but yeah, maybe 15 or 20, I'd say. Yeah.
But yeah, so 30 hours versus 120.
Yeah.
But, each are their own tools. Now that we're past the very beginning learning phases, right? I can go to the sim now and I'm like, I want to work on this very specific thing. And I'll go work on that. And I can do that for 3-4 hours versus then when I get in the real car, it's like, I tried to do that and it didn't quite work that way. Well, I know what I need to change. And then boom, catch right up in 2-3 laps.
Right. And you only have maybe your heat. So like maybe 5 laps to do that same thing when you could keep practicing and practicing on the sim. Like, which is why I got the sim. I know like everyone I hear, that's how they got really good. It's just still learning in a real car first. It just still... I've had it now over a year, and I'm still struggling a little bit with it.
Yeah, you're in the same boat as everybody that's drove real life before they hopped on my sim.
Yeah,
they like it and they don't like it, and they struggle to get up to speed.
Yeah,
even Rich, every time he jumps in the sim, is just like the first 30 minutes is just like he's like, it looks like I don't know how to drive, and I was like, that's because you're relearning with your eyes. Like, don't worry, you'll be back to normal Rich driving after your 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And sure enough, back to Lincoln laps.
Killed it. Nice. Well, is there anything else you want to touch on or talk about before we close out?
Yeah, so big things outside of drifting. Well, not outside, but big things that I'm doing next year for 2025.
Yeah.
So with the growth of the Veterans Trust and these base takeovers, which, by the way, make us the coolest drifters in the world, no one else can touch us. Cool. I don't care if you're doing Drift Appalachia. You're not out there drifting on closed airfields and in between military vehicles and motor pools. Yeah. So anyways, hot take, hate me if you want. But with the growth of that, because we're doing Fort Liberty again, with potential of 2 other bases, that's 3 bases across the U.S. You got 5 rounds of U.S. drift circuit. I literally don't make enough PTO to go do all this stuff. Like, yay, I have a good job. I make good money. I have the money to go do all this, but I literally can't take the time off. So for the past year, I've been trying to figure out what can I do, what can I start a business for in order to have that time, but also make money and so on and so forth. And I've been trying to find the niche, and I've landed on the fact that there's nobody in Orlando that's your like tire hookup. So I'm looking at you, Lewis. I'm going to compete against you, Mr. Zach Nova.
Yeah.
But you can. There's nobody in Orlando that sells just drift tires. So I'm bringing in Vitor and Zestino. I'm buying a 20-foot container. They'll be right at my property in Deltona.
Nice.
And I'm going to bring them to OSW during track days and whatnot. But I'm going to be selling tires. And then also with the closing of American Motorsports, which was our nitrous hookup, and I'm the big every time at US Drift Circuit, when people have nitrous questions, they ask me.
Yeah.
And then I go, well, why are you running it that way? You should run it this way. And then they go, oh, that makes so much sense. But anyways, with the closure of American Motorsports, there's not very many shops in Orlando that fill nitrous. And they all fill it by freezing your bottle. And I mean, I bring 9 bottles to a competition round.
Yeah.
I'm not dropping off 9 bottles because that's $2,500 worth of bottles and accessories and stuff for some company to slowly fill them by putting it in their freezer for 5 hours and pulling it out. So I'm going to get a transfer pump, and I'm working with JC Motor Works out of Tennessee to get me squared away on the licensing and stuff like that. But I'm going to be able to fill nitrous at the track, fill nitrous at my home, sell you tires, mount your tires, and that's the big news for 2025.
Awesome.
So standard competition and other drifting stuff.
Have you tried both of those tires that you mentioned?
Nope.
No. Yeah.
But the OGs will tell you that the Zestinos, great tires.
Yeah, I haven't tried those.
That's an old OG Japanese tire.
Zestino.
So I'll have 340 treadwear Zestinos, 300 treadwear Zestinos, and then of course the FD 200 treadwear Vitor tire. The other thing that's kind of cool that's still in the works, but I might. So JC Motorworks is the nitrous supplier for FD, but he can't make all the rounds. So I might be, not official yet, filling nitrous for FD at Road Atlanta and at OSW out of my rig and my setup.
Yeah.
So that's how I'm going to start the business.
That's awesome.
And hopefully it grows, and I can quit my full-time job and work for myself for 2026. Like I said, already planning for 2026.
Yeah. That's awesome.
That's the start. So if you need tires in Orlando, if you need nitrous,
2025,
you hit me up.
Yeah, bro. Hell yeah. I'll definitely try those tires out for sure. Awesome, man.
For now, since it's only 400 tires, I'm only buying 265s.
Okay.
But if that goes quickly, then I'm open to bringing more sizes. Just as my first container purchase, I was just like, keep it simple. I'm only getting 4 different types of tires, all the same size, and go from there.
Let's see what you can do. Yeah, man. Yeah, you gotta, I guess, give it a test run or like a proof of concept, right? So. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. The way that I'm looking at the tires, at least, is a really big upfront investment. But at least I'm buying all the sizes that I can use. So worst case, it's like, well, at least I have tires for 3 years.
Yeah, dude.
But I'd prefer it not that way.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, it's a good backup just in case. Like.
Yeah. So hopefully the container lands at my property before spring break.
Okay.
Because I want to be able to bring my rig out there with nitrous and tires for spring break bash and just swing on by and get yourself some extra tires.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah, dude. Well, man, I appreciate you stopping by. Drop a thumbs up. Leave a comment below. Check out John Temple at JTuned Motorsports 257. We'll catch you next time, fam.
Thank you. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.